Hi, folks, and welcome back to the Star Wars Library, where Star Wars is in print. And man, have I been waiting for this video. I know several of you have been telling me how excited you are for this review, and me personally, I am too. Today, we get to talk about my favorite Star Wars movie of all time, and actually my favorite movie of all time, Return of the Jedi. Well, the novelization of it, at least. And here it is right here. This is the 1995 pressing of it when they put out the original trilogy, and it's the final time it's theatrical cut with the enhanced THX sound and picture quality. And again, just like with A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back, this is the cover that I first saw on the VHS when I first saw the movie. And Return of the Jedi has just always been my favorite Star Wars movie. In fact, just to, I guess, show off pieces of my Star Wars collection, I actually have these bookmarks here from Return of the Jedi, but they actually, and it's hard to see because of the light, but inside here are actually film cells from the movie. And the certificates of authenticity are back here just to prove that they're legit and I'm not full of crap. But anyways, I love Return of the Jedi. It's always been my favorite Star Wars movie. But I guess that's a whole nother topic because we are talking about the novelization. It is the final of the OT by Del Rey, and it's kind of refreshing too to talk about a novel. So James Kahn is the writer this time around, and I don't. I mean, about the plot, there really isn't much to say. I mean, I'm assuming you have seen the movie. Like most people have seen the movie. This one reads very well, and I've said it before in the previous reviews for the OT novelizations. Um, it reads very similar to the movie, and I feel like a broken record whenever I talk about these, but again, they don't add too much. They're very, very. It's pretty much like here's what happened in the movie, so here's what we're gonna retell in the novel. But like I said, it does add some things to it, just not enough, I think, to make it as memorable as say the prequel novelizations. It adds more to the Battle of Endor. We see a lot more of that. We also have time with Jar Jar, who is the Imperial officer who greets Vader when he comes off of the Imperial shuttle in the beginning of the movie. And there's a lot of deleted scenes put back in. For example, we see Luke constructing or putting or working on, I guess, his new lightsaber. We get to see that. Of course, for the longest time, we didn't know if that was legit until the Blu-rays, right? So those come in, and we see a lot more, I guess, some background. And what's really interesting about this novelization, which I think is one of the things that has always stuck out for me about it, was we get to see a lot more about the prequel trilogy. And now remember, this is in 1983 is when this first came out. Granted, not this again, not this issue, but when this novel first was put out, it was right around the time of the movie. So this is 1983. There's a lot of stuff in here, particularly where Obi-Wan is telling Luke, um, I guess what happened to Darth Vader and all that. I want to read for you just a little bit, just because I think that this is kind of interesting. So basically, it's kind of the whole thing where he's like, you told me Vader betrayed and murdered my father. We all know that. So, certain point of view, Luke, you're going to find many, blah, that. So then Obi-Wan continues. Now, again, the novel refers to him as Ben because that's how Luke knows him. Um, Obi-Wan says, I don't blame you for being angry, Ben coaxed. If I was wrong in what I did, it certainly wouldn't have been the first time. You see, what happened to your father was my fault. So then Luke sits down and they have the conversation where, where Obi-Wan says, when I first encountered your father, he was already a great pilot. So he does that. Then he goes on, he says, I thought I could be as good a teacher as Yoda. I was wrong. Such my foolish pride. The Emperor sensed Anakin's power and he lured him to the dark side. He paused sadly and looked directly into Luke's eyes. If you were asking for the boy's forgiveness, my pride had terrible consequences for the galaxy. And so Luke is basically really entranced with the story. He's like, wow, what's going on? You know, he's like, yeah, Obi-Wan wasn't perfect, wasn't even a perfect Jedi. Horrible because the dark side could strike so close to home, could turn such a right to wrong. Darth Vader must yet have a spark of Anakin Skywalker deep inside. And then Luke says, there is still good in him. Ben shook his head. I also thought he could be turned back to the good side. It couldn't be done. He is more machine now than man, twisting and evil. So Luke then says, like, I can't kill my own father. Here's where it gets more into the backstory of the prequels. Obi-Wan says, after Luke says, I can't kill my own father, Obi-Wan says, you should not think of that machine as your father. It was the teacher speaking again. When I saw what had become of him, I tried to dissuade him, to draw him back from the dark side. We fought. ... For a pause. Your father fell into a molten pit. When your father clawed his way out of that pool, the change had been burned into him forever. He was Darth Vader, without a trace of Anakin Skywalker, irredeemably dark, scarred, kept only alive by machinery and his own black will. So basically, again, we're seeing a first glimpse into the Mustafar fight, which again showed in the early, George always had that. That was always in the early backstory. But isn't that interesting? 1983, in the novelization, we're already seeing that Obi-Wan and Anakin fought around lava, at least, and Anakin got burnt. And that's what gave him the suit. Kind of interesting. Again, 1983. Revenge of the Sith didn't come out until 2005. So they go on and basically, Obi-Wan's like, Luke, you should have been more trained. You should have listened to Yoda. You should have completed your training. You rushed off. Your friends had to save you. It wasn't you who had to save them. It was the other way around. And so basically he's like, he tells Luke, to be a Jedi, Luke, you must confront and then go beyond the dark side. The side your father couldn't get past. Impatience is the easiest door for you, like your father. Only your father was seduced by what he found on the other side of the door, and you have held firm. You're no longer so reckless now, Luke. You are strong and patient, and you are ready for your final confrontation. And so then they go on and talk about Leia and all that. So Obi-Wan's like, oh, the other Yoda spoke of is your twin sister. I don't have a sister to protect you both from the, yada, yada, yada. Here's where it gets, I guess, some contradictions here. It was basically, bury your feelings deep down, Luke, blah, blah, blah. Ben continued, when your father left, he didn't know your mother was pregnant. Your mother and I knew he would find out eventually, but we wanted to keep you both safe as possible for as long as possible. So I took you, well, I guess I should stop there. Anakin left. He didn't know that Padme was pregnant. We found out in Revenge of the Sith that he did know that Padme was pregnant. In fact, her pregnancy was kind of the whole reason for why he was tempted to the dark side. So Obi-Wan continues. So I took you to live with my brother Owen on Tatooine. Obi-Wan has a brother named Tatooine. Now, of course, we find out in the prequels in Episode 2 that no, Owen is actually Anakin's stepbrother, not Obi-Wan's brother. However, there was a little bit of a retcon there. So in the Jedi Apprentice series, which is about Padawan, Obi-Wan, and Phantom Menace, it's leading up into the movie. This is the first book of the series. We find that Obi-Wan has a brother named Owen who works for the Jedi Agricorps. And basically what that is that students who couldn't get a master basically went there and served, still serving the order, but they weren't going to be fully trained Jedi Knights. They couldn't get a master. So we find out that Owen has a brother in this series named Owen. So again, kind of cool, kind of a nice little nod, a little wink to this. And so anyways, carrying on here, and your mother took Leia to live as the daughter of Senator Organa on Tatooine. So basically, we're seeing that there's some things here that obviously needed to be ironed out and were changed for the prequel trilogy. So again, it's a little strange, especially when you're reading it. You're assuming that you've already seen the prequels. It's a little strange, but remember, George was still ironing out the kinks in the backstory for what would be the prequel trilogy. So, and this is what it was at the time. So that's really the only major contradiction in the story, was just most of it's accurate, but then there are pieces where, like, the Obi-Wan's actual brother Owen was Owen Lars, not his Owen brother in Jedi Apprentice, and then of course Padme herself took Leia, when that's not the case. Padme died in childbirth. So again, contradictions there, but not really that bad. Um, so also real quick too, as I've talked about with the others, I do have some of the Return of the Jedi comic book adaptations. These are the only two single issues I have. I have it in trade. Um, Here's the thing too, just like with the other Empire Strikes Back and A New Hope comics, there really isn't much to say about here. Again, it's pretty much just a visual retelling of Return of the Jedi. That is it. There really is not a reason to pick this up if you're going to read the novelization. If you want more Return of the Jedi or another version of Return of the Jedi, I would suggest the novel. The comics, again, if you like good 80s comics and you want an adaptation of that, rock on with your bad self. But the comics, eh, they're skippable. One thing to mention though is that Marvel did not include these in their normal Marvel Star Wars run like they did in New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. These are a part of a 4-issue limited series of Return of the Jedi. So they're not going to be a part of the main Marvel continuity. So you cannot find these in our a long time ago trades. You can find them though in the omnibus, Dark Horse omnibus versions of those. But as for the actual trades that we've been going through, these are not included. So I guess final thoughts. Here's the thing. I've said before, this is my favorite of the OT novelizations. And again, maybe I'm biased because Jedi is my favorite Star Wars movie. Um, but it just reads a lot better. And because, you know, they knew that this was the last chapter in the story, they could maybe do a little bit more in terms of that than they, usually had with, New Hope and Empire. But again, you won't get as much from these. I cannot wait to talk about the prequel novelizations because those are perfect examples of how to turn a movie into a novel. It gives us a reason to read the novel. Um, or there's a reason to read the novelization as well as seeing the movie. In this case, just like with the other two, you're better off seeing the movie. But is this a bad book? No. Is this a good read? I think so. Yes. Um, and again, I love seeing the references to the prequel trilogy way back in 1983, and it is pretty cool to see that how George didn't change his mind too much, I guess. And I mean, clearly it was changed, but maybe not as much as one would think. So, anyways, folks, that's about all I have to say about Return of the Jedi. Thank you so much for tuning in, folks, and I will see you next time with another novel as we go through the Star Wars library. Take care, folks, and may the Force be with you.